Yo, what's going on, Dragon Ballers? Welcome back to another deck profile. We are once again with Russell Stelzer, the one and only, who is actually here with us today with an updated Sin profile. And this is actually for the new Set 16 ban list format. And this is built for best of one, where you'll be able to pre-side, which Bandai announced you'll be able to do at the new DBS Fest events. So firstly, Russ, what's going on, man?
Good, man. I'm glad to do another deck profile for you. I'm excited for the festival events. But yeah, like you said, I definitely made this deck in mind for the best of one pre-side, which I think is an interesting format. I do still think my deck is still catered towards best of three, just because they said top cut might be best of three. So you don't want your main deck to just be a pile of junk and just hope to fix it during side, because if you do end up going to best of three in top cut and your main deck just isn't fine-tuned enough, then you might just be dropping game ones in top cut, which is not what you want to do, you know?
Yeah, I'm personally a really big fan of this new format idea. Obviously, it seems like it's borrowed from Flesh and Blood, but it really does like eliminate a lot of the variance in best of three, which is awesome. Like, you know, sometimes you go into a best of one event and you run into your bad matchup and there's just nothing you can do. So with the ability to side deck in game one, it makes that fight a bit more fair. And then, you know, you still might, you know, draw, unfortunately, but in Dragon Ball, that's not really too big of a deal. But anyways, we're
like
going over.
Bandai said, it might not be a permanent thing, right? Like they said, this is all just testing it out, which I think, you know, is great. You know, test it out. If it works, we keep doing it. If not, then we go back to the old ways, you know?
Yeah, no, I absolutely agree. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. But I'm glad at least we're trying. But anyways, let's take a look at the deck you built.
Yep, Sin Shenron leader. Everybody knows what it does by this point.
Tap 6, win the game, basically. And now that Fu Shrouded is banned, man, that's a really big weight off Sin's shoulders.
Honestly, that's all I had to see on the ban list. I saw Fu was gone. I was like, we're in there. We're winning that.
Sin is back in there.
But the obvious thing started off. This is Control Sin, so obviously we're going to max out on the 1-stars, the 4-drop, and the 9-drop. Bread and butter of your deck. Not much to say here. The goal is to always try and get this guy out by turn 2. Some consistency boosters. We have 4 Ice Shenron. Obviously, again, we want to make sure that we're always opening up with our 1-star, which is the great thing about this deck is it's so consistent in its engine that you get to play around with a lot of techie choices, just because you're almost guaranteed to open up your 1-star and get your 9-drop out turn 2. The deck just is very good at doing what it needs to do every single game, which is a big reason why I like playing this at big events with multiple rounds.
Quick question, what's the main deck count at?
Main deck count is 55. Same main deck count I had at Nats.
Okay.
Yeah. Then again, Oceanus and Omega. I've said it before, this is the best 2-card combo in the deck. Arguably one of the best 2-card combos in the game. Like, this just gives you more consistency. This guy he does everything. Most of the time you're going to copy this. He draws a card. He can take a life if you want to take a life. A lot of times in Control Sin you don't want to take that life, but you can if you need an extra card. He deals with Pan's Secret Rare when you copy this guy. And Pan is a really big card this format and will probably continue to be a really big card next format. So this card just lets you play around a lot of things. Having barrier, blocker that can clear boards and is really good on defense is just always good. 3 Haze. Still on the 3. This is something that you could bump up to 4 if you wanted to. I've never had a problem at 3 not seeing a copy when I needed to see it, because the deck is just, again, so good at searching out its pieces. But this card is obviously one of the best cards in the deck. Kind of similar to this guy. These 2 cards just give you a lot of interaction in the combo step that your opponent doesn't immediately see on board. They're going to have to play around these cards if they're in your hand, because these cards can just lead to absurd situations. But that's another reason why I really like this deck is you just have these safety blankets in your hand that your opponent has to play around. Even if you don't have them in your hand, just the pure existence of them being in your deck, your opponent always has to be aware of these 2 cards.
Yeah, I like the 2 Oceanus a lot, because sometimes people don't even play it, or they play like 1 copy. I think it's actually really underrated card.
Yeah, it's just a solid card. If you sequence your blocks correctly, like you block with the card, and then your opponent swings at your lead with like a 15k, and you combo out of it with Oceanus and untap your blocker, you just stop 3 attacks by just losing 1 card.
That's mega value. Yeah,
it's pretty absurd. Then I run like 5 1-of Sin cards. These are all cards that, like the 3 yellow ones, the promo, the Naturion, and the Nova, honestly are my least favorite Shenrons in the deck. They're here because, one, they're just each individual names that you can bring back off your leader. They all have decent abilities. Like Nova is a lot better in the mid-range and aggro versions of the deck. In the control version, you don't really want to be like milling a bunch of cards off your deck. It just doesn't come up a lot in the control version, but it comes up sometimes, so it's there because sometimes you do want it. Natron, same thing. He's a good target to revive off of your leader ability, but I don't really want more than 1 copy of him. Same thing with the 8-drop. In the control version, a lot of times I don't really want to be using his actual effect. Most of the time you just want to be grabbing him back with your leader ability. So that's why you only run 1 copy of him. But once you start hitting that 6 energy, he's a good card to help close out games or just blow up a Unison in 1 shot. Again, I ran this black Sin at Nats, and he was amazing, especially going to this next ban list. Blue didn't get touched at all, and this card is really good against blue because he gets around God Sealing. He can be 2 double strike attacks, so he can, by himself, he can clear blue Unison. And he just puts a lot of pressure on blue decks that they can't really interact with him very well because Deflect Barrier is just very good keyword skills against blue. And then 1 Oceanus, it's a negate that you can grab off your leader ability. So that's why I only run 1 copy of these guys, because you still can get to them pretty consistently every game, but you don't want to be running multiple black cards. Like these 2 cards are infinitely better than these 3 cards, but because they're black, you don't want to run multiple copies of them. This deck, until you start get your engine going, you have pretty small hand sizes. So if you're clogging it up with black cards, you make your charges really awkward, and you don't really want to be charging your good cards. So yeah, I like these at their ratios. They all serve their purpose in their own way. For my Unison lineup, I'm still running the 1 Goku Black and the 4 Mechikabura. I like having the extra Unison. I love consistency, and being able to consistently have a Unison every game to make sure I awaken on curve is important to me. This guy he's more than just Awakener. Like his skills have always been relevant to me. It came up a lot in Nats where the -1 gain to pop stuff was actually really relevant against decks like Gogeta Zeno. And I still think that deck is going to be around come banlist or come next format. It got hit, but it's still a very strong deck. Mechikabura, still just the best Unison in the game. And power being hit to 1, honestly, I think helps this deck. Like I did run power at 4 at Nats, but the fact that I don't have to worry about my Meki always being tapped down or a blocker getting tapped down on my opponent's turn is just more beneficial.
Yeah, that was a huge thing for yellow mid-range decks like Icarus going against Sin was, free power, tap a blocker, especially tapping Meki is crazy good.
Yeah, so the fact that Meki is more times than not going to be going off now is it's amazing. I added back the Vegeta combos. I didn't run these at Nats, and honestly, this card has fallen off of yellow decks for quite some time now. Like most yellow decks did not run this card for a while. But I do like it going into this next format, especially after placing well at Nats. I see a lot more people talking about Sin going with Fu getting banned. I assume a lot more people are going to try out playing Sin because it doesn't have as many checks as it used to anymore. And this card is it's just a generically good card, but it's really good in the mirror match. Just because if your opponent ever taps 6, you can tap everything down. And they do untap at the end of the turn, but they're summoning like 7 guys on you, and you put them all in rest mode. That's 7 attacks you don't have to worry about for a turn. So it just kind of they tap 6 energy to get all their guys out, which is still great, but you mitigate that pressure. And if they don't have this card, and you get to play out all your guys, then you just get to swing with everything, and they have to deal with it, right? Now they're having to dedicate resources to defending, where you just got to play dude and shut off their whole offense for a turn. So I really like this guy. Again, we're still running 4 Zamasu Super Combo. We're still the control version. We want to stay at a high life total as much as we can. So this guy just being always live is important against aggro decks, being able to tap down like leaders, or just if they spam the board, being able to stop multiple attacks with one card. That's all we can really ask for at this deck. Yeah, I don't think I would change from this.
Yeah, with power at 1, Zamasu seems to pick up a lot of value.
Oh, 100%, yeah. And then speak of the devil, of course we got the 1 power Super Saiyan. It's still broken, even though it's at 1. Every yellow deck is going to run this as a staple 1 of. And then I added in 2 of the token blockers, or token negates. Again, kind of with the Vegeta combo, I wanted more stuff that was like free defense, because in Sin you don't have a lot of energy to work with. A lot of times your plays are all taken up by one big like tap of all your energy. Like when you play your Unison on curve, you're tapping 4. I have another card you'll see later on that you tap 5 energy for. When you're on your backside, you tap 6 energy. So a lot of times you don't have a lot of energy to work with, and just being able to have free defense that doesn't cost you energy helps out a lot with being able to just shut down your opponent's turns. And then Forbidden Power, I'm still running this guy. I upped it up to 3 now. This guy just overperformed for me at Nats, and yeah, I think it warranted bumping up to a 3rd spot, because there's multiple times at Nats where I was like, if I just had this card in hand, I'm like, I just get to shut your turn off and it just makes my life easier. So I wanted more copies. I just wanted to constantly see this card. Honestly, I could even see running 4 copies of this guy if you wanted to move some ratios around. I just think this card is absolutely broken. Its Activate Battle actually has come up for me many times. And with power at 1, it's another way to rest something and trigger things like Poutine. So yeah, I actually do really like this card.
Yeah, and that card plus Machika Bora is just like baby hatch. Like, it's so good.
Oh yeah, no, I talked about how Oceanus and Omega was the best 2-card combo in the deck, but Forbidden Power Meki Kabura might actually be the best 2-card combo in the game. It's broken. And then still running the 2 5-drop Friezas. I think this card is broken. Soul Striker is going to be a very big deck at any major event you go to, just because it didn't get hit. It was already a popular deck, and Frieza it's a house against blue decks. Even in the mirror match, like if you're able to tap down your opponent's cards and like clear them and just get free pressure every turn. Like I played against a Sin at Nats, and this card put in a lot of work, because every turn I was able to swing and he wasn't really able to negate my stuff, because I was able, if he did, I would tap down his energy and he wouldn't be able to use his backside ability. And then I would just gain too much advantage. So this card it puts in a lot of work in every matchup that you're able to get it down.
Yeah, I've only ever seen you play that card in this deck, so I would call that definitely the Rust tech for Sid.
Yeah, it's my favorite. It's my favorite battle card in the game, honestly, right now. It just, every time you play it, you feel like you just win. One cooler, I wasn't maining this at Nats, but because of the hit to power, just have a little bit of extra space, so I put this into the main deck. Again, blue is going to be very popular, so it's nice to have a main deck out to hatch Secret Rare, Pan Secret Rares running around everywhere. So it's nice to just have outs to big, like, turn-ending counters. One Poutine, again, we're still a yellow deck. Even though power got hit, we have a ton of ways to tap things down in this deck. So Poutine is still very easy to trigger. And if you can play Poutine, you play Poutine. Because one, he's really good against blue too. But he's also really good against red. Because red has the new U7 deck coming out, and being able to, all their stuff comes into play off the skills basically, and Poutine is just going to stop a lot of attacks throughout the course of a game. So Poutine's really good. And then last card in the main deck, obviously seeing Secret Rare. Still running this guy. I think he's still just absurd. I know some people have talked to me about it and said they've tried it out and they like it. Some people are still on the fence, but this card, like I said before, just turns your leader into hatch. You stick him out there and you just stop all your opponent's attacks for the turn. So yeah, if you haven't tried this card out, I would suggest trying it out, and you will see just how ridiculously strong this card is, and being able to search him off of like your leader ability. Like you just have so many ways to see him in your top 5 and just pick him out, which I think is one of the biggest pluses, because you can't pick Sin, you can't pick Pan off of your leader, and you can, if you play another Seeker and you mill it off your top, it's gone forever. But you mill this guy off the top, it's fine. You just bring him back off your leader ability. I just think he's really strong.
All right, so let's check out that main deck, which again, this is basically built for the best of 1 pre-side format. So we'll try to talk about some of the things that you want to bring in for certain matchups. Obviously, it's a little bit tougher to know what to expect going into a fresh format, but I don't think things are shaking up too crazily. What do you think, Russ?
Yeah, I don't think as of right now anything changes too much. I think we'll see a lot of the same decks. I think we'll see a lot more Sin than we did. Soul Striker will probably be the most represented deck at a given tournament.
Well, I guess the big change is probably a big lack of hand control, huh?
Yes, that's the biggest thing, which is another reason. Like, I was running Goku Apes in the main at Nats. Obviously, I'm not running them anymore because, well, one, you just don't need to main deck the hand control hate because it's pre-sided, and I just don't expect to see hand control in Top Cut, at least at the beginning of the format. So game 1s, if we're playing best of 3 in Top Cut, I don't want to have those cards in my main deck because they're just dead against every other matchup. But yeah, going into the sideboard, I run 2 Tyrannical Blow. I think it's just a good generic yellow card. It stops things like Riposte. And going into Top Cut at Nats, obviously everybody knows I lost to Android 21 at Nats, and I didn't really have much to sideboard in for that matchup because I was just not expecting it. But I think at PPG somebody had played Android 21 too, so I'm not sure if it's like on the up and coming, it's trending up and people are going to start playing it. But having an out to Android 16, their energy ramper, just to slow them down so they don't get out of control, because I still feel like if they have to charge an energy every turn they're not ramping, I think I am still favored in that matchup. But when they are able to ramp so fast into their 8-drop, it's really hard for me to deal with that card. So just being able to slow them down, I think, is important. And like I said, you can side it in against decks that play like forward post. So yeah, it's just a card that has some multi-uses.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but a card like that, you could probably take out Forbidden Power, right? Because like Android 21, you wouldn't expect them to be aggressive with you, right? So that's like a pretty
100%.
Pretty good swap out.
Yeah, you would take that card out for sure. And then 2 Final Flash, again, just another good generic yellow card. If anything needs to be dealt with, like especially in the mirror match, I would side these in probably in the mirror match, just because one interaction, if you're both playing Sin Seeker Rare, if I don't have Sin Seeker Rare out, let's say my opponent does, I can Final Flash it and steal it with Mecha Unison, which is just a really strong thing to do. So in the mirror match, just in case my opponent is thinking the same thing, you want these in your deck just in case. If your opponent does it to you and you don't have a Final Flash to be able to steal it back, then you're going to be in a lot of trouble because they just stole your secret rare for the game. So yeah, I do really like this card. Obviously, it's just a generically good yellow card. 3 Vegeta Unison, comes in obviously against decks like Gogeta Zeno. Even against the new U7 deck, being able to drop this before your opponent hits 4 energy so that they can't just slam their new big SR and swing at you. Obviously, if you have a 9-drop out, you're safe. But if you don't have a 9-drop out for some reason, if they kill it like the turn before, you can slam this down and make sure they don't get to look at your hand with their big guy. So yeah, again, this card just has a lot of uses.
So a card like that for a matchup like Gogeta Zeno or maybe even like Red Jiren, would you take out most of or all of your Mecha Unisons, or would you still play some number of both?
I would still maybe like a copy of the Mecha Unison, just because it's such an impactful Unison when you do get it out in those matchups. Like if you stick a Mecha Unison on Gogeta Zeno, you feel super, especially because if you get thwarting into rest mode and you just keep it tapped down with Mecha Unison, you never have to worry about thwarting for the rest of the game because they won't be able to get rid of it. You just leave it sitting there in rest mode and they'll never get to play another thing on you for the rest of the game, which is the best card in their deck. So yeah, it's really strong against them. I even leave the Goku Black Unison in too, because it lets me awaken early on them. Like all my Unisons are really strong in that matchup, so just seeing any of them is really good. So it's hard cutting them because they're so impactful, but maybe cutting like 1 or 2 Mechis would be fine, just to have space and not clog up on too many cards that don't combo for anything.
Gotcha.
And then I side a third freeze at 5. Again, for blue matchups, I think are really strong. You play at least one copy of this against blue, and you're feeling pretty good. I side the third copy just because Sin doesn't draw on its front side; it just searches out a bunch of shadow dragons. So being able to put a third copy in against the matchups you want to see it is just going to help you see it on curve more often than not. And again, like when I lost in top 16, game 1 I was able to play this guy out there against Android 21, and it won me the game because I was just able to put a lot of pressure on. And in games 2 and 3, I never really got to establish this guy. So again, yeah, I put the third copy into the side deck just so I can ensure that I'm not going to brick off of not seeing this card throughout the course of the match. And then I'm running 2 max power Kamehameha. Again, I think Sin is going to be a lot more represented at events going forward. So these would come in the mirror match just to be able to warp away the 9 drops. If I ever just need a negate, it's just a generic negate I can bring in. Yeah, against the U7 decks, I'm not sure if the big SR I don't think has barrier.
No.
I think it just has deflect, right?
Yeah, just deflect, yep.
Yeah, so if you ever get that thing in rest mode, you can just like max power it away and not have to worry about it, which is nice. Then one of Meki Kabura, again, just another generic card that you can bring in certain matchups. Again, like Android 21 was the only deck that ever felt strong against me throughout that whole weekend. So it's kind of odd dedicating spots to Android 21, but I tried to dedicate cards to that matchup just in case I saw it again, but still had uses in other matchups. And I think Meki is another strong one. If they're coming up on their 8 energy, you can just slap this down and make sure that they have to wait at least another turn to drop their big bomb on you. And then, yeah, any other matchup where you can bring this in and he's impactful, you have him there for. And then second Poutine, just against like matchups like U7 where she's just very impactful. You have a second copy just to consistently see it more throughout the course of the game. And then the last 3 cards in the sideboard, I still sideboard 3 Dabura. Hand Destruction obviously got a huge hit because Cell was the main Hand Destruction deck, and it's no longer around. But I don't think that means we won't see Hand Destruction, so it's nice to still be prepared for it, just because some people might come into the festival events with the mentality that Cell's no longer around, so people won't sideboard for it, and you just don't want to get caught off guard by a Hand Destruction deck. So it's just nice to have them in there. He may not get used, but at least if you do come against a Hand Destruction deck, you're ready for it.
Yeah, I'd agree. Definitely better be prepared than not be prepared. But anyways, Russ, I really appreciate you going through the deck with us. Any final words or shout outs you want to get out there?
And shout out to the team again. I always shout out the team, always shout out Joey. Joey's one of the people that helped me test in a lot going into Nats and helped me with a lot of my tech choices. And yeah, shout out to everybody that loves Sin, all the Sin supporters, the Shadow Dragon group, Crossworld TCG, all of our sponsors. You know who you are, Dead Planet, Mystic TCG. If I'm forgetting anybody, I'm sorry. But yeah, thank you for having me. I'm always happy to show off my Sin deck. So
all right, man. Yeah. Thank you again, and we will see you next time.
See ya.